That's not a pop top. I don't have my cap open here. Welcome back to Beer Brackets, everybody. This is an interesting review. The story behind this one, I was shopping. I was doing my beer shopping, Alessandro, in the LCBO, as a good beer explorer does. And I saw this beer, and I sent you a picture of it. I purchased it. I acquired this beer. I sent you a picture, and I was like, we need to review this beer. Because I had known of this beer. I've heard of it before. This beer, Kingfisher, actually is the highest selling beer in India, and it occupies over 30% of the market share in India, which is impressive considering the population that's there.
Food tastes better with Kingfisher, the king of good times.
Yeah, and especially considering how well beer pairs with Indian food, which I don't know if you've ever had that pairing before. It is fantastic. But there's a little caveat to this, because doing some research, there is the Kingfisher that you can get in India. The one that I got here is licensed by a brewery in the UK. So Kingfisher Europe. So using the same recipe, as they say, the same famous Indian recipe. And I think the one you have, we just found out doing some beer research, is brewed in the US, it seems like.
It sure does seem like that, my friend. Here on the front of the label, it says brewed and bottled by Kingfisher Brewing Company, Utica, I don't know how to pronounce it, New York. It says here on the back of the label, brewed under the technical supervision of the United Breweries Limited, Bangalore, etc. But seems like this version might have been brewed here in the US.
That's okay. Look,
we did some research, but it was very difficult to find any more information about where exactly.
We did so much research, and there's so little information available online on this beer. If anybody watching knows and can detail that a little bit more for us on this beer, please do, because this is a massive beer brand. Maybe not North America, but India and the UK, it's a huge beer brand. So there's got to be some information out there, so let us know. But we're going to try it, we are going to drink it, and we're going to give it a score like we do in our Beer Bracket beer reviews. There is an interesting beer legend to do with Kingfisher. So as we know...
Legend time.
Yes, rub those hands.
Legend time.
Rub those hands together, buddy. As we know, there were English colonizers that did enter into India in the 1800s. And beer rumor has it, that they were just so unimpressed by the beer options available in India at the time, which looking back on it, I can't imagine that the beer options were vast for people coming from the UK. I'd imagine all those delicious porters that they were used to. You can't even imagine what they were drinking at that time.
They probably got there and they had here, we have this and water.
Yeah. We have tea and water. It's like, where's the beer? Where's the beer? And they apparently, and this is according to the Wikipedia, they demanded that a delicious, high-quality beer that met their standards, my friend, be brewed. And that was the recipe that was put together by a mix of the locals and some beer historians that were sent over from England, over to India to help to produce this beer. They were there for the
original beer explorers that were sent like those wizards in disguise.
The beer educators, the beer academics,
the evangelists,
the beer historians, the beer evangelists. There you go. Going on their rickety wooden boats all the way to India to make beer for those colonizers. This recipe, even if we do have versions of it that were brewed under license elsewhere, this is that famous recipe put together by those beer evangelists. I love that term, like you said, buddy.
One thing that I found out about the name, obviously I'm sure it's pretty obvious, but it's actually the name of the little bird that you see there on the label, which I didn't know.
That is a fantastic point. The Kingfisher bird. That's that beautiful bird and where that name comes from. I've been waiting to try this one for a long time, man. Let's do this.
Let's do it, my friend. It's time.
Oh, it is not a twist off.
Oh my goodness.
I'm beer improvising.
Yes!
I used the lens cap to my camera to pop that one.
That's perfect.
Beer improvisation at its finest. Here we go. Kingfisher.
Let's do it.
Ooh.
Nice color.
Wait. You can hear the beer sounds. Oh, yeah. The Indian Beer Ocean. I've never heard the Indian Beer Ocean.
It's quite crisp.
So I gotta say, it kind of smells like
Ooh. What does it smell like, my friend?
It's got like a little bit of Labatt Blue in there. Maybe like a little bit
that grainy kind of.
Yeah. Exactly. All right. Aroma cheers, buddy.
Aroma cheers to you, my friend. Aroma cheers.
Premium lager beer.
Okay. like you said, there is this heavy graininess surrounded by this luscious sweetness.
Luscious.
It's intense. I do get a little bit of that hop presence on end of getting a little whiff of this.
Yeah, you do.
This
a little
premium
bit of it.
Indian beer, and
the aroma's evolving.
It is evolving. It is evolving quite a bit.
Yeah.
Honestly, like it might just be because I've never had it. So I'm curious, but I think I'm going to start with a 1.5, my friend, because I'm intrigued.
Yeah, the aroma evolved when I first cracked it. Like I told you, I got almost like a little bad blue Molson Canadian kind of aroma to it. But then it mellowed out, and then it started evolving a little bit. And you get like a little bit of sweetness, maybe like a little bit of like some floral elements in there too. Very bready, deep bready biscuitiness. This is delicious. I'm really excited to go in. As far as lagers go, I'm tempted to go up to a 2, but I'm going to stick to a 1.5 as well. I'm going to stay trepidatious and hesitant at first. I'm going to wait and see with this beer. That's the mode that I'm taking, my friend.
Cheers
Let's
to you.
take our first sip of our Indian lagers here.
Cheers to you, my friend.
Cheers, buddy. Okay. Oh.
That's surprising.
Just like the aroma, the taste kind of evolves a little bit.
It is surprising. It has almost like a little bit of every stage. The first like initial sweetness that evolves quickly into, for me, that malt grain switches again over to almost like a herbal. I'm almost tempted to say like have you ever had like a mint tea? It's like that has almost this vegetal, but very pleasant and refreshing characteristic.
Yeah, totally. I know what you mean, 100%.
So that turns into a little bit of bitterness that sticks around, but very quickly.
Yeah.
And I quite like that, man. I'm going to go with the 2 here.
Oh, wait, you really?
I like it.
It's interesting, right?
I like it.
I mean, it's kind of like a common theme for me. Like when I first smelled it, I went back to like some cheaper macro lagers. When I first tasted it, my mind initially went to some cheaper macro lagers, but then the taste kind of evolves. And it doesn't have that sort of, and this is the finish, so I won't get into it too much, but it doesn't have that cheap beer finish that I expect it to have. It just evolves into something very subtle and very sort of, you know what? I'm going to use a term, a word, buddy, that I've never used on the channel before to describe a taste. The taste is very juicy. It's very it's very rich and
almost fruity, but
it's very, just lack of a better term, juicy. It's kind of like a very good cheap lager. It's interesting.
It's a premium.
I'm like,
it's a premium.
Yeah, man. I mean, as far as taste goes for lagers, I'll give it a 1.5. I'm going to stick with a 1.5. I'm not going to go as high as a 2. It's interesting. It's good.
I saw you there. You were almost like, you went, 1.5.
But you know what it is? Because in the moment I get excited, and in the moment I'm just like, this is interesting. I want to go up to a 2. But then I think about all the good beers that we've had, and I think about, like, does it live up to a 2? Like, all the good lagers that I've had in my life, does it really live up to a 2? And it didn't, unfortunately. But now, my friend, the Mouthfeel. We got to do our patented beer bracket Mouthfeel refresher. There it is.
All right, let's take a sip. You know what? Like, this Mouthfeel is incredibly light, even for considering, the fact that there's this huge malt presence. The carbonation is extremely lively, even if there's not a lot of head. Like, I don't find like a heavy body on it. Very little oily stickiness. There is, though, a little bit. So it, like, towards the end there, it lingers. Quite refreshing in a way. I think a 1.5 is where I'm going here with it. I think the taste kind of got me a little excited for all the different elements there, but
I know, right?
The mouthfeel is well done, but it's also not surprising.
It's also not. Yeah, I think it's a pretty standard lager mouthfeel. Nothing special there. I'm going to use a word.
Another one?
I've used only one. I'm going to use a word that I've only used once before on this channel. And I'm going to say that the mouthfeel is very juicy. It's very sort of... It's very moist. I don't know how else to describe it. I'm going to keep using that word juicy. I'm struggling with descriptors on this one, but it's like... it's very juicy. It's like it's very wet. It's a very wet body to this beer. It's not dry at all. It's no Asahi Super Dry. I'll give it that.
It sticks around.
It sticks around, exactly. It coats your palate. Like we always say, like that oily coating that you get sometimes on some beers. I'll give it 1.5. I think 1.5 is fair, man. Stick middle of the road here. But now we get to the finish. It's not a juicy finish for me. I'll say that up front. There's not a lot of juice going on in this finish.
You know how we always say the finish is interesting because that's where all the things come together in a sense, right? On this beer, most of the experience is almost like up front. At least for me, I get like incredible aromas, very interesting taste for different elements that I get. But on the finish, honestly, everything disappears really quickly. That oily stickiness, juiciness, if you want, like stays around for a little bit. But there's no bitterness.
It's a juicy ass lager. You always hear that juicy ass IPA?
There you go, a juicy ass lager. I love it. There's not much that lingers, which, at least for me, that's always an element that is important in a beer. Leaving something before you leave, right? Like, so, I don't know. On the finish, I'm going to go with the 1, my friend. I'm not a huge fan. Like, it's very, and maybe that's what they're going for, but expecting a little bit more. How about that?
I got to say, my excitement in the LCBO seeing this beer a couple of weeks ago, whenever it was, maybe months ago, I look for how long it's been sitting in my fridge, taking up valuable beer space. And I know you sympathize with this.
I do.
And our wives are never too happy with us when our beer is full of beer bracket beers waiting to be reviewed. This has been taking up very valuable beer space, and I was very excited. I gotta say, I'm a little disappointed, and it's very kind of standard in a lot of ways, and especially on the finish, it's there's nothing to report. It's very just abrupt, nothing interesting. A little bit of hop, a little bit of malt. Anything that was interesting off the aroma or the taste at first is not there on the finish. It's not bad. It's a very sessionable beer. Like, this is just a good run-of-the-mill lager that you could drink a bunch of if you wanted to. So there's nothing bad there. So I think a 1. Would you give it a 1?
I gave it a 1, yeah, my friend. I was a little harsh there.
I think for me, a 1 is going to have to be something that I don't like. In this case, I'm going to stick with a 1.5 just because it's like middle of the road, just average. So now, buddy, an overall beer experience for Kingfisher and the many different iterations and variations of Kingfisher that exist that we do have here in front of us. What do you think?
Well, my friend, I think just like what your conclusion on the finish with is can be used like a little bit to describe this beer in general. I think it's well done. I would not be disappointed at any time if you gave me a bottle of Kingfisher ice cold and you said, here, like, that's great, awesome. Is there anything that like is wowing? For me, it was like that element on the taste. There's a couple of elements that I was not expecting, but aside of that, like, I think the 1.5 is where I'm going to land. Like, so right there, middle of the road, well done. Everything checks every box. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I was hoping for something a little unique. And you can tell that it's a quality beer. It doesn't have any of those characteristics of a bad macro lager would have, let's say. It's not harsh in any way. It's very drinkable, very sessionable. You can tell it was done with care. But yeah, I'm going to stick with the 1.5 middle of the road beer experience. It's just a drinkable beverage. It's got some interesting points to it. The aroma, I really enjoyed the aroma. The aroma is my favorite part of this beer. Aside from that, there's not much else to write home about. So 1.5 across the board for Kingfisher. I love making palak paneer. I don't know if you've ever had palak paneer, my friend, but it's a delicious Indian dish made with spinach and some ground masala and paneer, which is a really nice sort of salty Indian cheese. And it's a delicious dish to have with some fresh naan bread. And I can see this pairing so well. So I understand where they were coming from. Our final scores kind of reflect everything we've expressed on this episode all the way through, kind of middle of the line. 2.5 down 5, which on our rating system is a good beer. And that's basically what it is. It's a good beer. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Let us know down below everything that we tried to dig up and figure out about these different licensed versions of Kingfisher. If you know more specifics, let us know down below. Have you tried Kingfisher? Have you tried it in India? Is it different? Is it any better?
How about on tap?
Let us know if you happen to be watching from India. If you just discovered Beer Brackets by searching for your favorite beer, Kingfisher, and you have some opinions, some thoughts, let us know. We'd love to hear
Write
from
them
you.
down. Let us know how it is on tap,
Yeah.
because we can definitely not find that one here.
If you do enjoy this video, give us a like down below. Subscribe if you want to catch more of these episodes. Click that little beer bell.
And most importantly, don't forget to
Close your beer brackets.
Hey, there you go. We said it at the same time. Perfect.